Hi guys. We have a Ruby, Franke, and Jodi Hildebrandt update. This video is not going to be easy to get through, but I'm going to try to make it clear, concise, and not too long, so please bear with me. There's going to be a trigger warning right at the top for mistreatment of children, and this is a tough one. We know more about the search warrants that were executed for Jodi and Ruby in this case that is unfolding. I could not believe when all of this was released. Honestly, I found out, did my own research to prepare for this update that I was going to film, and I signed offline for a while because I just needed to take some time to process. Because when I hear this stuff, I automatically have these like visuals in my head that are very disturbing, and I have to like do something to stop that. Not to make it about myself at all. That's not what I'm doing. I have heard of some tough stuff during my time. Obviously, you know, we've all heard of some heartbreaking stuff, but this is just a whole new ball game. So I'm going to be reading a lot in this video. Bear with me. But let's just start at the top. It says, new search warrants obtained by 2 News details allegations of Jodi Hildebrandt using cayenne pepper and honey to, quote, dress wounds, end quote, on the bodies of 2 of Ruby Franke's children where they had allegedly been bound with duct tape, a medically dangerous and potentially painful use of the herb. And obviously, most of us know that if you have an open wound or an abrasion or a cut, you don't put cayenne pepper on an open wound. I know that it has medicinal purposes, but the way that it was being used in this situation is not that. So I'm not giving any credit for natural medicine, homeopathic remedies. That's not what this conversation is about. I understand that those things exist. That is not at all what we're dealing with here. Its medical use aside, the presence of any type of remedy for the children's wounds proved Hildebrandt at best was aware the abuse was happening, authorities said, as stated in documents. 2 separate warrants were signed and served on the day a 911 call was made by a neighbor of Jodi Hildebrandt in Utah with a child at his doorstep. And we've heard those 911 calls before. Every single time I hear them on other creators reacting to this, it breaks my heart all over again because you can just hear the anguish and the pain in that man's voice. It shook him to his core and just completely broke the man. Officers found that the victim's mother, Ruby Franke, had left her 3 children in the care of Jodi Hildebrandt. One of the search warrant affidavits states, officers also found that Jodi Hildebrandt had posted several posts on social media and YouTube channels where she discusses mental health and family therapy. A 3rd search warrant was signed the following day, August 31st, 2023. So let's go over these 3 different search warrants. The first one was on Jodi's property, her home. And it says the first warrant, a sergeant with the Santa Clara Ivans Police Department had reason to believe there were items described at Hildebrandt's address as property used in the commission of the criminal offense of child abuse. This warrant was executed around 2 p.m. on August 30th of 2023. In a statement included in the affidavit for the search warrant, upon arrival, officers found that a 12-year-old victim had duct tape around their ankles and it appeared to be emaciated because the victim was abnormally thin and weak. The affidavit continues, and we're still on the one for Jodi's home, her residence, her property. The affidavit continued to say that the medical personnel removed the duct tape and located open wounds. I just can't imagine duct tape being on your skin and then having an open wound under that duct tape and those open wounds being treated with something like cayenne pepper and honey. The victim informed officers and medical personnel that the wounds were from the rope that was used to tie the victim to the ground. said the statement establishing grounds for the search warrant. The victim informed officers that Jodi put the ropes on their ankles and wrists and that they used cayenne pepper and honey to dress the wounds. Even though Ruby Franke is at the center of this, obviously, because she and Jodi are both, they're both being charged. I think that the rabbit hole and the darkness of Jodi Hildebrandt is something that we have only seen maybe 20% of. I think it's going to get so much worse and just be shocking for anyone who's following this case. While cayenne pepper has been an ingredient used for medicinal purposes, it should not be used on cracked skin or open wounds, according to Mount Sinai. It also says don't use topical cayenne ointments for more than 2 days in a row for a child, and restating don't use on cracked skin or open wounds. I don't think this was something that was being used for a medicinal purpose. I think that Jodi might say that it was being used for medicinal purpose, but in my personal opinion, allegedly, I think that it was being used as a torture tactic, knowing that it was causing severe discomfort for these children. And I think that's the reason that it was being used, allegedly, in my opinion. According to the affidavit, officers conducted a protective sweep and located one juvenile who was reluctant to speak with officers. They also identified a possible safe room in the basement that is locked, and it is unknown if anyone was inside. I covered that as well. It continues and said the affidavit ended with the officer's request to obtain any and all evidence relating to child abuse and access to the possible safe room to determine that nobody else was inside. The boy police first spoke with had initially told officers that 2 of his siblings, a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old, were inside Hildebrandt's home before he escaped, but authorities only found the youngest child, the search warrant records indicate. Officers determined that Ruby had left 3 of her children in Hildebrandt's care, though it is unclear for how long, according to the records. The 3rd child was not immediately located, police wrote at the time. What on earth? Ruby Franke leaving her children with Jodi Hildebrandt. Unbelievable. 2 days before Franke's 12-year-old son escaped, a YouTube video depicted Franke in Hildebrandt's home. According to court documents, investigators considered the footage evidence that Franke had recently been in the home and knew of the abuse. I've talked about that before, but that was also stated here. According to the return of the search warrant, officers seized Scott's tape and saran wrap, along with papers, notes, a journal, 2 bowls containing a red liquid with a metal spoon, 2 super absorbent dressings, and 2 Coban bandages, with 4 white ankle socks, 3 sets of a brown and white rope, 2 handcuffs, and 3 carabiners. The cayenne pepper thing and the handcuffs and this red liquid that they found, and Ruby and Jodi better not get away with this, because the more information that comes out, the more angry I get, and I'm trying to cover this from the seat of having a conversation about things that are unfolding, but I feel my anger building up as more and more comes out. I'm just filled with disgust for both of these monsters. Now we go to the second warrant, and this was a warrant for the communication between Jodi and Ruby and recordings of alleged abuse. The second search warrant was signed just before 5:30 p.m. on August 30th with a request for any and all cell phones, audio recordings, computers, tablets, laptops, surveillance footage, doorbell cameras, and any other communication device used to send text messages or email, or any other audio or visual communications. The warrant specifically requests to obtain any devices from Jodi Hildebrandt or her home where she may have had communication with Ruby Franke. I am scared to think of what might come out once some of this is released, if it's released to the public. The things that these two monsters were talking about. According to the return document for the search warrant, 3 Apple iPhones and 4 Apple MacBook computers were seized. Now we go on to the third and final warrant, and that is the warrant for Jodi Hildebrandt's phone. The third search warrant was signed the day after officers arrived at the home on August 31st, just before 8 a.m. The detective requested Jodi Hildebrandt's iPhone, saying she was in possession of the phone when officers made contact with her. There is no documentation of a return made on the search warrant. Therefore, it's unknown if Jodi's phone was seized. I think it's safe to assume if she had it, it was probably seized. But moving on, it says, however, new information presented itself in the affidavit for this search warrant. 2 News learned that the 12-year-old was transported to an area hospital and was placed on a medical hold due to his deep lacerations from being tied up with rope and his malnourishment. This document also outlines how the 12-year-old's 10-year-old sibling was determined to be malnourished by medical professionals. This affidavit also outlines the search warrant on Jodi Hildebrandt's home, mentioning that officers located 2 used medical gauze dressings near the cayenne pepper and honey paste. I don't understand how anybody could even think of doing that to a child who was already being malnourished, abused, mistreated, tied up. And then you're going to add a torture device by using cayenne pepper on open wounds that you caused. Put them under the jail. Her and Ruby both. It continues and says, Ms. Hildebrandt requested a lawyer and did not speak with us. Said the affidavit, Ms. Hildebrandt informed me that, and names the 2 children, should never be allowed around any of their kids. Hildebrandt's attorney, Douglas Terry, was out of the office Wednesday and not available for comment on the allegations contained in the search warrant. Franke's attorney, Lamar Winward, is out of the country, his office said. That is the update now that the search warrants have been released and there's more information coming out. I don't think that anybody was not shocked. Like, how could you not be shocked hearing about this cayenne pepper and honey mixture being used on these children's open wounds? I don't think that anybody could hear that and not be surprised. Like, we know that Jodi is a monster, but goddamn, you know what I mean? It just like really crushes my soul too, because, you know, the Mormon Church has been behind allowing Jodi to get away with a lot of this really awful, unethical, disgusting behavior between her and clients. They, you know, would allow her to work with these Boy Scouts who, the guy Adam, like I've talked about his story in passing. I don't know, there are so many people involved in this that are crooked and vile and just need to be held accountable. Ruby and Jodi first, then Kevin, then anybody else who was allowing this kind of behavior to go unchecked for years. I don't think her license should have ever been reinstated. I don't think that she should have been allowed to be a therapist. I don't think that she should have been allowed to collect money from people who were in a mental health or trauma situation. The whole thing makes me sick to my stomach. But I did want to provide this update because I received so many messages. Did you see the cayenne pepper? Did you hear about the cayenne pepper? Did you hear about the search warrants? So I wanted to provide this. Let me know how you guys feel. Obviously, this is one that I can guess how most of y'all are going to feel. It's just really heartbreaking. And I hope that those kids are, now that we're a couple weeks out, I hope that they are getting the privacy and the love that they need, along with the guidance from people who are qualified to give it, and more importantly, those who are qualified and can be trusted. Hopefully it's nobody associated with the Mormon Church, and that's just my opinion. I'm going to let you guys go, so for now, if you like the video, please leave a like and a comment, and if you'd like to see more from me in the future, please subscribe. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.